guys, and welcome to this video. I hope you're all doing well, because this video is a very deep video today, very stressful video. I wanted to start this video on a positive note. I think I've done it before on my channel and introduced you to another one of my guinea pigs called Percy. Percy is a rescue pig that I acquired in December, about a week before Christmas, and he is around 9 months old now. And this is Percy, guys. He's absolutely adorable, and he's quite big as well. As you can see, he's well cared for and well fed. I want to get into this case today. If you have any questions about Percy as well at the end of the video, please feel free to ask me. As I just mentioned, guys, today's case is going to be a very deep case. We are going to be talking about the mistreatment, and I'm using that term very lightly actually, of two very small children. So I just want to put a disclaimer out about that, because this is a very, very sensitive case today. The second thing I wanted to mention, which is a bit less important than that, is I only have one photo for this case, guys, which is very unusual when I cover an international case on my channel. But there are very specific reasons why there's only one photo as well, which is out there on the internet, and I will explain that a little bit later on, of course, in this video. For this case, guys, we are going to Singapore. I've never actually covered a case in Singapore before on my channel. This is a case that I randomly came across while I was looking for other types of cases, basically, and often the cases that are the most random ones that I come across, international cases, end up touching me the most emotionally. And this is again one of those cases where I feel like there wasn't enough press on this case. It wasn't brought to the forefront enough, and for the victims of this case I really wanted to bring more awareness of this particular case. So let's get into it. In this case, guys, we only have one name, and that is the name of the little girl who's the victim, well, one of the victims of today's case, and her name is Ayesha. Okay, so at the time when everything took place, when everything started, Ayesha was around 3 years old, and she had a little biological brother who was 1 year younger, so he was 2 when everything started in this case today. So for this case, I'm going to refer to her father as Ayesha's father, and there's also the stepmother, and I'm just going to refer to her as the stepmother because, again, we don't have a name for her, and Ayesha's brother as Ayesha's little brother. Okay, just to give some clarity there. So how everything started is Ayesha's father was previously with someone else, so Ayesha's mother, and he had 2 children, so Ayesha and Ayesha's little brother. Ayesha was born in 2012 and her brother was born in 2013. Okay, Ayesha's mother and the father separated. He's then got with another lady who's become Ayesha's stepmother, and with that lady, Ayesha's father had 3 children. So between Ayesha's father and the stepmother, they've got 3 kids between them. And Ayesha's stepmother actually had 1 child also before she came into the relationship with Ayesha. So altogether, you've got Ayesha and her brother, the 3 kids that the stepmother and the father have had, and then 1 child that Ayesha's stepmother had already. So altogether, we have got 6 children in this case, but primarily we are going to be mainly focusing on Ayesha and her little brother, who are obviously not the stepmother's children. Now, it is unknown actually how Ayesha and her brother ended up living with the father, what was the reasoning behind it, and where was Ayesha's biological mother. But essentially, for a short period of time, it was around 2014, I want to say 2013, 2014, Ayesha and her little brother were in foster care for a little bit, and then around 2014 they both came to live with their biological father, and so they were living with the biological father, these other siblings, the other 4 siblings essentially, in a 1-bedroom flat in Singapore. It's said that from 2003 to 2016 Ayesha's father was a police officer, and then from 2016 to 2017 he worked in a fast food restaurant, and then after that he's kind of dropped off the face of employment. Basically, he was unemployed. And the stepmother, it's not really known what she did. It sounds like she wasn't really doing anything, basically. Okay, so anyway, all of them are living in this 1-bedroom flat, so it's quite a small space in itself. It's not said that it's not a very nice flat or anything, but it obviously, as you can imagine, for 6 kids and 2 adults is a very limited amount of space, okay? So apparently, when the children, so Ayesha and her brother, were returned from foster care to Ayesha's father in around 2014, at that time apparently everything was okay. There was nothing unusual in the family really, to be honest. And then welfare would do checks on the kids and that was okay. And then he actually took them to, the little boy and Ayesha, to a counselling meeting as well, and that was okay. And then suddenly all those kind of checks and everything stopped. This is where we reached the point of December 2015, and this is a very important stage in Ayesha's life and what happens in this case, because this is where all these kind of heinous, disgusting acts start taking place in regards to Ayesha and her little brother. I believe around the time of this case taking place, Ayesha's father was in his early 40s and the mother was in her mid to late 30s, I want to say. Sorry guys, the stepmother. So essentially from December 2015, the father and the stepmother started committing all these cruel acts of abuse on both of the children. And what they started to do initially, well, this was across the board, I think, with all 6 children. I think she was pregnant with one, so maybe it was 5, and then she was pregnant with another child. But essentially, because they had less income coming in, initially this doesn't sound terrible, but obviously it gets worse. So because they didn't have much income coming in, apparently, they would only give the kids 2 meals a day as opposed to 3 meals. This is how it started. It's like very progressive, okay? And then from December 2015, they singled out Ayesha and her little brother. So at this time, he was around 3 years old actually when it started, 3, 4, and Ayesha was 4, 5, around 4 actually, because the abuse went on for about 10 months, but it was like a progressive build-up, as these things generally are. So initially what happened is the father and the stepmother kind of installed this, what we can refer to as a naughty step, but it's a bit more extensive than that, I want to say. So it was kind of like a wardrobe and a bookcase, and the children had to sit, both of them, in this very small confined space in their nappies, and they weren't allowed to come out of that space unless it was to eat like lunch or dinner or to take a shower, like to wash. That was the only time they were allowed to come out of these confined spaces, and the kids weren't going to nursery school or anything. So literally practically 24 hours a day they're sitting confined between a wardrobe and a bookcase. They're not allowed to play with any toys or do anything. And it said sometimes, I mean, it sounds like to me that they weren't really changing the kids' nappies. The kids were just sat there between this bookcase and this wardrobe all day. And there was a point where Ayesha's father wanted to change her nappy at some point, and basically it's like it was overflowing, like they weren't changing the nappies regularly or anything. And she got up, obviously we're talking about like a 3-4 year old child here, got up and smeared poo on the like the living room wall or something, and Ayesha's father started punching her. This is a 3-year-old little girl we're talking about, right? And this is just the start. And as time went on, the stepmother and the father decided, for some reason, it was a good idea to have the kids move from being between this bookcase and this wardrobe 24 hours a day and put them in a bathroom. And this is what the only picture I've got is of this bathroom, so you guys can kind of see how it is. So the little boy and the little girl, so they're around 3 and 4 years old, are put in this bathroom all day, 24 hours a day for the next 10 months. And while they're in this bathroom, guys, remember I said that they actually had nappies on initially. They've got no clothes on. They don't give them any clothing, bedding, mattress, nappies, nothing basically. They're just completely naked for the next 10 months, and they're both locked in the bathroom. They're not allowed out of the bathroom at any point, 24 hours a day. The children are very malnourished. They're barely being fed by the father and the stepmother. The other kids are not actually treated in this way. It's just Ayesha and her little brother. So they're locked in this bathroom 24 hours a day. Basically, there are points where they are playing in their own shit, basically, to put it bluntly and directly, because these are two very small children not being cared for adequately, and they are just in their own shit. They're not being changed, they've got no clothes, no nappies, nothing, right? And obviously, because they're very malnourished and the stepmother and the father are not feeding these kids adequately at all, even if they are, these children are so hungry, guys, that it hurts me to say in this video that they were eating their own faeces, which is horrific. They would play in their own faeces, they would eat their own faeces, and they are left in this bathroom for 10 months, 24 hours a day. And the only time that these children were allowed out of the bathroom was when Ayesha's father and the stepmother needed to use the toilet or take a shower. The rest of the time they were locked in there, sat in their faeces, eating their faeces. And the father is also subjecting the kids to a lot of physical violent abuse, like kicking them, punching them, both Ayesha and her brother, which is very intense, as you can imagine. There is a point, it said, where he decides to call like welfare, like social services, and he wants to put them back in care. That's between kind of 2015, 2016, in this 10-month time frame. But for some reason, he then decides against putting them back into care, and it's not really known why. So this abuse just basically continues. And at this time, remember I mentioned, guys, earlier that the stepmother's pregnant. So as I said, I think at this time there's the two children that she's got with him, that child that she had before him, and then she's pregnant basically with their third child. This stepmother, she's very evil as well, right? And she's one of them, like, I forgot to mention, I think, guys, that actually the father installed CCTV. Initially installed it when the children had to be 24 hours a day between this bookcase and the wardrobe, and then he's installed it, I think, with this toilet situation, so he can monitor them all the time. Like, these people are fucking insane, to put it bluntly. And there's a point where the stepmother, she gets up, and it's like the middle of the night, like it's nearly 3 a.m. or something. She goes to check on the children, and she opens the bathroom door, and she says that they're in this, like, sleeping in this weird position. I'm thinking, like, you've got two small kids on a bathroom floor in their own shit. You've given them no clothes. They're probably freezing cold, starving and in pain. And you're concerned about what position they're sleeping in. Really, that's your main concern. Anyway, this stupid bitch. Sorry, guys, for the offensive language in this language in this video, but it's really difficult to restrain myself because this woman and this man are really pissing me off, to be honest. So it's really difficult for me to refrain from swearing. So I do apologise. So basically, the stepmother, she goes to alert Ayesha's father that, look, the kids are sleeping in this weird position. It's like 3 a.m. It's like, what's it to you what position they're sleeping in? Go back to bed. And so she tells the father, look, they're sleeping in this weird position, blah, blah. So the father gets up and he starts beating the children, punching them, all of this kind of thing at 3 o'clock in the morning. Like, haven't people got anything else to do at 3 o'clock in the morning, right? Anyway, all this abuse is carried out over this 10-month period. Anyway, as happens, and it's very sad to say, in a lot of cases where very small children or children are treated extremely badly like this, and I'm putting my words very mildly there, guys, there is sometimes a detrimental, horrific outcome. And this case is unfortunately not dissimilar to some other cases. And Ayesha's father is punching her. Apparently he's punched her twice, but I would beg to differ whether it's more than that, if I'm honest. And while he's punched her, it's like she's banged her head or something on the floor. By this point, Ayesha's about 5 and her brother's 4, by the way. And she's lost consciousness. And at this point, sadly, Ayesha has lost her life. And the father and the stepmother now have to come up with this plan, as is unfortunately often the case in these types of cases, to explain why Ayesha has lost her life. Her little brother, touch wood, even though he is in a very deplorable state as well, is still clinging to life at this stage, okay? So the father tells the stepmother to say that he's attacked her, as in he's attacked his wife, the stepmother, and something's happened with the children in the process. Like, it's a really weird storyline that he actually comes up with, to be honest with you. But anyway, they've then taken him and the stepmother, Ayesha, and the little brother to hospital. Obviously, when they get to the hospital, the doctors and nurses are like, what the hell? Like, these children are in a really bad state. Obviously, they've been in their own faeces, so there is a really strong odour, smell. And one thing the doctor, who's commented on this case and who saw the kids when they went to hospital, said that their toes were all like burnt, or like something had been done to the toes, and the head was like fractured, and they just like had this foul smell, and they were really malnourished, and it was very visible that they were really unkept for both of the kids. And then she said when they got there, obviously Ayesha was pronounced dead, but the little brother was still alive. And so the little brother, touch wood, by the grace of God, is still alive at this stage and survives, which I always want to say, when it seems like this, it's a bloody miracle that sometimes these children or men or women pull through. And this little boy was clinging to life, literally. He was not far off from where Ayesha was. So they managed to save him at the hospital, treat all his injuries, I want to say. It's pronounced that Ayesha's got blunt force trauma to her head. When an autopsy is done, it's discovered that she's got medications in her. So she's got antihistamine, and there was another medication, like an anti-nausea medication or something, that was in her as well. And this is where a whole investigation obviously starts. When I started reading up about this case, guys, and researching it, I thought, why is there only a first name for this child? There's no surname, there's no name for her brother, and no name for the stepmother or the father or anything. And the judge who resided over this case, and I feel like it's very accurate and fair what he did, he actually said that he didn't want Ayesha's father and stepmother's names and the little brother's name to be revealed, and her name actually initially, because to protect the identity of the little brother because of this horrific situation. So to protect him, because he's still alive, the identities of all of them weren't going to be revealed, including Ayesha's. And then by the time this went to court, which I'm going to get to in a minute, many years later, he decided to reveal the Ayesha's first name and identity and have this case publicised publicly without the other identities, to still protect the little brother, because he said that the case was so horrific that it should be known for Ayesha's sake, to not forget her. So the case goes to court, and the lawyer that Ayesha's father has, you know, guys, the types of lawyers that defend psychopath killers like Ayesha's father, those types of lawyers, they shouldn't walk on this earth, quite frankly. There's some positions in society and some jobs where you need to put the interest and welfare of people first. And when you defend people who actually have committed a murder, not people who have been mistakenly taken as a murderer when they haven't committed it, that's quite different. But when you actually know that the person has killed someone, especially a child, I don't know how you can get up in the morning and look at yourself in the mirror when that's your client in a courtroom and you have chosen to defend them. You weren't obliged to, but you chose to take them on as your client. That's a big problem for me. Anyway, initially, it's the usual kind of garb, I want to say. The lawyer is kind of like, oh, you know, my client didn't do this on purpose. Like, he didn't think she was going to die. It was only 2 punches. You know, it was an accident. I'm thinking, listen, when you are subjecting a child to this for 10 months straight, And it's at this level, which is everything I've described and probably a lot more in depth, if I'm honest, than what I've described. You can't tell me this is an accident, what you've done to the child, because we all know that's bullshit, right? And the little brother is still alive and can speak, and yeah. And I forgot to mention, guys, sorry, I'll come back to this sentence in a minute, but the little brother who was 4, he struggled to walk, he struggled to stand, he couldn't speak, he had to have 3 months of physical, mental re-education, just to be able to walk and say basic words after he was subjected to this, right? So you can't tell me that what this father did is an accident, because it's not. You chose to do that to the children, right? So anyway, the lawyer's like pushing for this lower sentence as possible, which is again always the case, and that, you know, his client did this and it was an accident and all this and blah 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 blah. Anyway, the judge is kind of like not on this, and when this case starts, this man has got about 30 different charges against him. Like, it's a lot. So you've got all the charges of the abuse that he's done to the children. Obviously, Ayesha's sadly passed away, so that should be a murder charge, of course. And then I forgot to mention, guys, remember I told you that the dad installed all this CCTV to monitor the kids, which means that there would normally be video evidence of him subjecting the children to the abuse, right? Okay, there should be lots of evidence, because this is over a 10-month period and he's filming it all because he's an idiot or a psychopath or a narcissist, whatever you want to call him, a disgusting person. So where is all these video recordings of this, right? Because this is a lot of evidence, 10 months of video evidence. So the judge is like, where is this? And this man, as these people do, these cowards, he's tried to get rid of the evidence, dispose of it, conceal it, whatever. And the stepmother as well has tried to conceal the evidence, which in any criminal case, when you are trying to dispose or conceal vital evidence in a court case, as we know, that is a crime. Anyway, somehow the police managed to get hold of some of the evidence. They get it out of him where the evidence is, and they get this video evidence. So they know what Ayesha and her brother have been subjected to, so they've now got the proof and all of this, right? And obviously he's tried to conceal it, so this is a criminal offence what he's done, and there are about 6 or 7 of the charges which were just to do with him trying to dispose of the video evidence, and then there's about 20 more other charges which are to do with what he's done to Ayesha and her brother. And I think the stepmother had about 4 charges of abuse which were which were on her, of what she's done to the kids, right, as well. So anyway, at this stage, the lawyer, like the judge, is pushing for a murder charge, and the prosecution and the lawyer are saying to drop all of these. They refer to them as lesser charges. And by the way, the lesser charges, there's about 17 of them. It's not like 1 or 2. And the lesser charges are the things like the fact he concealed all the video evidence and things like that, which is very serious. In any other country, that is a very, very serious offence, because it's something which obstructs investigating the case, right? It's very serious. In this case, it was kind of like, okay, we'll look at those other 17 charges later. Let's deal with the murder case charge first. And it's like, no, because when you have all these charges, in any court case, these amount to extra time for prison sentences. So this is very important, actually. So this is not something which should have been neglected, right? Anyway, basically, somehow the lawyer is like, no, it shouldn't be a murder charge. It should be a lesser charge of manslaughter. And manslaughter is like, okay, it was kind of an accident that I killed the person, but actually, we know, guys, this is not an accident. You did this to Ayesha. You killed her. It was very clear that this child was probably going to die because of the level of violence that you inflicted. For me, that's a murder charge. Now, prosecution and the court have reduced this conviction to the lesser charge of manslaughter, when actually it should have been murder. And the judge is like, and prosecution on Ayesha's side are pushing for the father to get a sentence of 30 to 34 years, right? This is what they're pushing for. And the father's lawyer is saying no, he deserves only 18 to 20 years. It's like, no, you don't deserve 18 to 20 years for killing your daughter and subjecting your son, who's still alive, by the way, who's got to live through the trauma and get through this, like, living, how's he going to live for the rest of his life through this situation and recover, right? No, you don't deserve 18 to 20 years. You deserve more than 34 years, actually. But anyway, but the judge is like, no, you are going to get a sentence of 34 years. Actually, not even 34 years, 34 and a half. And that was the sentence that the judge decided. And that's basically what the father got. Now, on top of that, because I think the way the conviction was done, it was partially under Sharia law or something in Singapore. I'm not too sure. But they have the additional convictions that they can add on, like lashes publicly and things like that. So the judge was like, I'm going to add on 12 lashes on top of the 34 and a half years. And he actually said in the courtroom, this is to make an example for people to understand that if they try to do this type of crime to children, this is what they are going to get, or worse, basically. And he literally said that, which I think, honestly, thank God, like, I'm glad this man spoke up like that. So that is what the father got sentenced to. Then we've got still the stepmother. She had 4 charges of abuse against her. And then one of those charges was that she also tried to conceal those videotapes, remember, as well. So she was due to have a sentencing in February 2025. And sorry, guys, by the time this went to court with the father, it was like February 2023 or something. Like, this took years to get to court. So the mother's sentencing was only in the past few weeks of February 2025. And to this point, we still don't actually know what her sentencing was. But it was supposed to be, said to be between 2 and 4 years in prison, or a $4,000 fine, or a prison sentence. At this stage, we still don't have the outcome for her. Now, for the father, there was an appeal done by his lawyer. The appeal, guys, was immediately rejected by the judge. It wasn't even like, oh, let's look at this for a few days, a few weeks. It was immediately rejected. Then there was another appeal done by the father's lawyer about the 12 lashes, remember, because the lawyer was like, oh, my client, you know, he's got problems with his discs in his back and whatever. Like, who gives a shit? Like, you've subjected your daughter to this, you've killed her with all the pain you've inflicted on her, and you're talking about your back pain, and you're literally talking about your back pain and your discs hurt. Like, who the fuck are you? Like, I'm sorry, guys, but no one cares if you've got back pain. Take painkillers. I literally do not care, right? So anyway, the lawyer's like, yeah, my client can't undergo the 12 lashes because he's got too much pain in his discs and his back and all this crap, yeah? It's not like the judge even said 100 lashes, it's 12. Like, get on with it, do you know what I mean? Anyway, the judge was like, fine, we'll forego the lashes, but you can do another 6 months in prison. So in the end, that 6 months was obviously added on to the time that the judge initially gave. So instead of being 34 and a half years, the sentence has now gone up to 35 years. And I believe this is without parole. So technically the father can't appeal. He needs to do those 35 years in prison. One thing that really grates on me, guys, apart from the fact that this man and the stepmother are absolutely disgusting in the first place, one thing that really pisses me off, and this is in a lot of criminal cases, is when the actual defendant, so the person who's committed, the perpetrator of the crime, who's ill-treated people or killed them or whatever, is like, oh, I can't do this because I'm in pain. Or they go to court and now they're so mentally distressed generally that they're not fit to stand trial. It's like, oh, you were fit to kill the person or inflict torture on the person, but you're not fit to stand trial. It's like, I don't care. If you were fit to murder someone or you're fit to torture a child, you're fit to stand the crime and the punishment. Like, and the only reason this man didn't get death sentence, because he could have got death sentence in Singapore actually, is because it was dropped to the lesser charge of manslaughter. Had it gone down as an actual murder, he would have actually had the death sentence. He narrowly missed the death sentence basically, and I think that's why his lawyer pleaded so hard for the manslaughter charge, to avoid the death sentence. But had this been a murder case, like a murder conviction, he would have got that death sentence like immediately. And had this been some other countries, obviously like US and places like that, he clearly would have got the death sentence. There's no way this would have been a manslaughter charge. And all this back pain nonsense, who cares? I have back pain, I take painkillers for it. It's like, what are you talking about? You can't have 12 lashes. Do you know what I mean? You're lucky you didn't get 200. The stepmother in court was actually asked why she didn't step in to help the children and all of this, and she was like, oh, you know, but I felt scared of my husband. We were in the middle of a divorce at that time, and I thought he would attack me if I tried to step in. It's like, you're an adult, you didn't speak up, and actually, as you guys would have seen in the case, she encouraged him to be violent towards the children. It's like, what are you talking about? You just want to get out of this situation. She actively encouraged the father to torture the children, and I really pray that this woman gets more than a 4-year sentence, if I'm honest with you, because that's what she deserves. She should get at least a 20-year sentence as well. And they are very lucky that their identities haven't been revealed to the public, because again, in other countries the identities would directly be revealed in the press, and obviously it's to protect this little boy so that he can grow up and try to have some kind of normality in his life and recover from these terrible, horrific things. And this is why I do these videos, guys, because cases like this still happen, and they shouldn't happen. We should be there to protect children, love children, care for children, and we need to look out in society for people like this that do these things that are absolutely deplorable and disgusting. Anyway, guys, I will leave this video here. As always, you are welcome to leave your feedback, comments down below on this case as well. Suggestions for any other international cases that you guys have come across or may want me to cover on my channel. And I will see you again, guys, very soon for another video.